a suit and tie and get your hair cut way up high. Get yourself a lawyer, son. You're gonna need a real good one.
Like Harvey Keitel in Pulp Fiction, this man is the cleaner. If you've got a problem, it's who you talk to. It is David Whiting, Melbourne solicitor, who's going to be helping you with hopefully some canny legal advice where he can. David, how are you?
I am very well, thank you, Matt.
You're a long-term fixture here, aren't you?
Yes.
Many years? How many years?
At the ABC, I was working with Terry Laidler on a Friday night when they were in William Street, William and Lonsdale.
Wow.
So I've been coming to this building since the week the building opened. So it's a while.
A while.
I spent 22 years with John Fane.
Biggest challenge you've been presented as a question? Well, what's been
the biggest challenge is really getting through the door downstairs with COVID-19 regulations.
Right.
But they're incredibly gracious about it.
And you know, you smell lovely. You're beautifully sanitised, and it's fantastic. No homework this week, which I'm glad to see.
Well, this is my last week until after Christmas, so I'm just terrified there'll be no homework this week too.
Well, don't worry. Everyone will have forgotten about it when we come back in.
I know. They ring.
Oh, well, they ring.
I asked you a question and you never gave me the answer.
Well, it's good that someone holds you to account.
Yes.
A Welsh jury has acquitted Thomas Davis of dangerous driving. Explain this story to me, please.
Well, he was a Welshman who put on a website that he had managed to drive from John O'Groats to Land's End, from the north of Scotland to the southwest of England, and he said that he had he'd managed to achieve 89 miles per hour for the whole of the trip.
Wow.
Now
that's pretty good, given some of those roads in Cornwall and up in the north of Scotland are pretty skinny.
Well, let's just look at what the speed limits would have been over much of the motorways that he would have used along the way, and the answer is a matter of logic. He just couldn't do it. So there were suggestions in earlier reports that he used devices that confused radar and had a number of number plates. So, but the police took him to court, and the evidence they had was his own statements. He told the world that he had exaggerated, and whether the Welsh jury believed him or were interested in his cavalier approach to the world, we will never know, but he was acquitted.
What's your gut feeling? Do you think they like the fact that he'd taken on a ridiculous challenge and pulled it off? Because I'm assuming you're not going to 89 miles per hour is not a lying figure, is it? It's the sort of figure that you get from your calculator.
Yes. So I tend to think he did it in the time he said. He would have broken any number of speed limits along the way on the basis that his statement is true. I just think everybody, not all the time, but every now and then, we like a cowboy.
Right. And he's obviously more Pony Express than any other type of cowboy. Does this have any relevance in terms of the move for the police to look at actually doing average speed, say, on the Geelong freeway? So rather than picking speed points to ping you, they'll ping you on how fast you've gone over the whole journey?
Well, I have a friend who was pinged 4 times over the Geelong Road.
What are the two?
They put the car on cruise control and
Right.
They were pinged 4 separate times. They were able to persuade the prosecution. They pleaded guilty to 1, but simply saying instead of that I was maintaining that speed over the whole of the trip. So, so it is possible to address the issue. I put my car on cruise control. My speed didn't vary, so between Westgate Bridge and Little River, that was my speed. So, yes, as opposed to 4 tickets.
And now there's a Spanish newspaper report you want to touch on.
A very old one, 2008, and Mr Delgado was involved in a motor vehicle accident when his Audi A8 collided with a cyclist who wasn't wearing a helmet or lights and killed the cyclist.
Yep.
And then what he decided to do, for no rational reason, was sue the estate of the cyclist for the cost of repairs to his car. So I was very pleased to see that a couple of days later he withdrew his claim.
So and were charges brought Was there couple driving charges brought against him?
Well, at the time there weren't. I don't know whether charges were ultimately laid, but at the time there weren't because the cyclist was not wearing safety gear, was not wearing, didn't have a helmet, and there were no lights on the bike.
Is that a defence though? I mean, if you can show that he's driving erratically over the speed limit.
It's a factor that any prosecutor would take into account in determining whether to lay charges. I mean, I think the death is, on any view, incredibly unfortunate and wrong. And in this particular case, he was speeding, but he wasn't even charged with speeding. So who knows? Who knows? I never professed to understand the Spanish court system.
I remember hiring a car in Italy, and we had a bit of a prang in it, and we were going to admit it until we saw that the court they were going to use for any claims or any cases would be Palermo, and we thought, I don't want to go to a court in Palermo ever. I can't see there being a good outcome from a Sicilian court, and so we snuck out of that one. Now let's take your calls. If you've got a question for David, legal question for David, give us a ring on 1300 222 774. Mina from Sydney, what's your question?
Hi, David. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Mina.
David, I'm located in Sydney, and I bought the block of land in Melbourne 2 years ago, and the developer told me to settle the land during the COVID period when the interstate borders were closed. And I was going through the financial crisis, and I couldn't get the extension for 6 months or so. They gave me only 3 weeks of extension.
Yes.
And my whole amount of $31,000 has been forfeited by the developers.
Yes.
So is there any law or is there any plea which I can request them, okay, now I'm ready to settle, and can you adjust my $31,000?
You can certainly make the plea, Mina. One of the things that I'd be doing would be seeing if the block had already been sold to somebody else.
No, it's not been sold to somebody else.
So the other issue you'll have is that it may well be that the block is now worth more money than it was when you signed up 2 years ago.
No.
At law, you signed a contract that said you would meet certain commitments for factors which are not within your control. You can't meet those commitments, but that's not relevant to the contract. So all you can do is plead with the vendor to reinstate the contract and settle quickly.
Okay, and they like in the contract there are certain norms which are far beyond the standard norms, like the rate of interest is 12%, you know.
As opposed to 10. Sorry, no, 12% is the standard rate of interest charged on contracts that are in default. The pro forma contract says it's 2% and the rate prescribed under Section 2 of the Penalty Interest Rates Act, that's currently 10%. So 12% is the norm, even though I would love to get an investment at 12%. So you might look to see whether there is an error in the contract which might enable you to avoid it. So it might end up being an unenforceable contract. But if it's been done by a major developer, I would have thought that would be very unlikely. I would be putting my effort into making sure that you could get the... so your offer that you would make to them would need to be unconditional. So it wouldn't be conditional on finance, conditional on anything else. You simply say, I've now got the money, I'd now like to settle, and I can settle in 30 days.
Okay, sure. And can I make a one request to the government that, like, there should be a standard contract which is available on the Fair Trading website that even a layman can go, that while going through a contract with the developer, these are the conditions, these are the parameters which you should be aware of. You know, you should.
There is a piece of legislation. So the Australian Consumer Law and Fair Trading Act does allow you to make an application to argue that clauses in a standard form contract are unfair, and we've taken them on in the past in relation to telephone contracts, telephone supplier contracts. Whether it would work in this case or not, I wouldn't like to hazard, but your real issue is that you didn't settle when the contract said you had to.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Mina.
Thank you, Mina. Thank you indeed. David from Vermouth, you've got a will question for our solicitor, David Whiting.
Oh, good morning, David. I'm ringing on behalf of a friend who came to me for some advice. He is currently nominated as the executor of his mother's will.
Yes.
She passed away. Excuse me. She passed away about 2 years ago. The only assets in the estate are his mother's home, which is an ex-Housing Commission house.
Yes.
And he and his mum have lived in the house for approximately the last 40 years.
Yep.
He's paid most of the bills for the house, including the house loan repayments, for about the last 28 years. His mum was on a pension. His brothers claim that these payments were equivalent to board.
Yes.
He's continued paying the mortgage since his mother passed away. His brothers demand he sell the house and divvy up the estate equally. And he has a conflict of interest as executor.
Yes, but we can fix the conflict of interest, David. That's the question, right?
Sorry?
You can fix the conflict of interest question. What happens is that somebody gets appointed to defend the estate. So it is possible for your friend to make a claim saying that his mother's will does not provide adequately for him. I have not in a position to pass judgment as to success or failure, but he can certainly say, Mum's will didn't provide adequately for me and I want a better or greater provision.
If he relinquishes being the
No. What actually happens is he doesn't need to relinquish being executor. He applies to the court for someone to be appointed to defend the interests of the estate.
Oh, okay.
Now, that would be one or both of his brothers, is the other logical players.
Yes.
There's no point paying anybody else to do it.
No, I agree.
So there is a process. I have come across this situation before. So you go to the court and you say, I want to make this application, but I'm the executor and I need you to appoint someone to look after the interests of the estate.
And if his brothers become the executors, can they sell the property?
We're looking at this slightly differently. If he was to renounce probate,
Yes.
And that would allow his brothers to apply for letters of administration of the estate, they would have the power to sell the property, and he would then need to go back and apply to court for an injunction to prevent the sale of the property pending the outcome of the proceeding.
Wonderful.
I'm a credibly mean lawyer, David, and if we don't need to spend money doing unnecessary things, let's not.
Well, he doesn't have a lot of money, so that's part of the dilemma.
Well, yes, but there is money in the house. There is equity in the house, which is the issue.
Yes, agreed.
Right, so, and it would also be possible to have an informal mediation that involves, so you would do what I'd call a position paper. This is why I'm entitled to more. And then that can be the purpose of that can be the basis of a discussion with the brothers, and that just might, resolve the matter without people spending millions on lawyers.
Yes, agreed.
Good stuff. David, thank you very much indeed for your call. Reese from Seaham, you've got an issue with the TAC.
I certainly have. Make it quick. 2 years ago, a lady jogger, wearing buds in her ears, and it ran straight in front of my car, which is a big Holden Colorado, and I had two choices, either kill her or hit a brick wall. So I chose the brick wall.
Yes.
Then I got out of the car, the wall was down, the car wasn't that badly damaged, and the airbags hadn't gone off. That's how slow I was going. Anyhow, a week later I said to my wife, geez, my back's still crook, because I thought it was just muscle or,
So, Reese, your problem is proving the accident, is that right?
That's right.
Yes.
Well, how can I do that? The wall's down. It's still down. The jogger disappeared into the west.
Well, it probably didn't even notice you, Reese.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. That's my point. There's no one who can
Did you report the accident to the owner of the wall?
Yes. Yeah, I left on the day. I left my card and told him to ring me, and I'd meet him the next day.
And did both of those things happen?
Yes.
So why is not the evidence from... I need to do some work in relation to single vehicle accidents, because we're really... but I would have thought that should be sufficient. Have you got a statutory declaration or a letter from the wall owner?
No, I haven't. I just spoke to him and said, well...
No. We're now at the point we're going to the TAC, and you've got to prove that you were injured as a result of a motor vehicle accident, and that means in part satisfying that there was an accident.
Well, I have gone to the most magnificent hospital in Richmond. I've had...
No. That's step 2. I have a series of injuries that are being looked after.
Yeah.
Right. Step one is I was involved in a motor vehicle accident. If you don't get past step one, step two is not relevant.
So David, is Reese's first step to get a stat dec from the owner of the wall?
As the starting point to explain that, yes, the wall was damaged, yes, was this, right?
Yes,
and we're looking at the panel beater, and we're getting evidence from the panel beater
that it was crushed into wall.
As to exactly where and how, exactly what damage was caused to the car. It was consistent with hitting a wall at that particular height. That's the kind of thing that you're looking at.
So they're probably the first two steps for Reese. Reese from Seaham, I hope that helps you start on that journey to get sorting stuff out with TAC. Brendan from Maidstone, you've got a rental issue.
Oh, hi, yeah.
Fire away, Brendan.
I'm just wondering, my landlord and real estate agent are asking me to pay the rent in one instalment, and they're linking to the issue in the contract or the lease where it says due and payable on and before the 15th of each month.
Yes.
So do I have to pay it in one go, or can I pay it in installment, like, you know?
You want to pay it, in a sense, weekly or fortnightly rather than monthly, is that right?
Yeah, that's what I've been doing.
It depends on what your lease says. If the lease says payable monthly in advance, the expectation is it will be a single payment. But if you're paying it into a bank account, I really don't see the issue.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought. I've been doing that for a long time, and all of a sudden I thought pay it in one go, and then I just wasn't quite sure about it.
So how long have you been in the house, Brendan? 5 years?
2008. So
okay. Same agent, same landlord?
Yes.
Then I would just keep making the payments. The chances of them throwing you out, and if you were, I'd have no difficulty going to VCAT and arguing, look, I'm not in default. It requires me to make the payments, but it doesn't require a single payment.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought when it said due and payable on and before the 15th of each month.
Yeah, so it's $1,000 a month or whatever the figure is, payable on and before the 15th of the month. You just keep paying, Brendan, and write to them and say, we've operated this way for 12 years.
Yeah.
Does that help, Brendan?
Yeah, that's fine. They're just sort of harassing and bullying, and I'm thinking, well, I don't really...
Have they changed the method by which payments are received by them? You're paying it into a different account? Because there may well be, if you're paying it through an agency of some kind, they may get stuck with a processing fee for every payment. So what it means is that the net rent that they receive after the processing fee might be slightly lower. So it might be that you might give them another $5 a month to overcome that problem.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
I hadn't thought about that.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Brendan. Now we've got some breaking legal news here. Tony Mockbull has had his drug conviction overturned as a result of the Lawyer X scandal. In 2012, Mockbull was jailed for 30 years for drug trafficking and launched an appeal earlier this year. Today, the Court of Appeal quashed its conviction. It's reserved its decision on whether to order a retrial or that he receives an acquittal. This is becoming a bigger and bigger story, isn't it, David Whiting, solicitor?
It is, incredibly. Yes, and we just don't know how much more there's going to come out. What's the suggestion? Something like 1,000 cases have been impacted by the evidence given that's the subject of the inquiry.
Wow, it's an ever-emerging story.
Yes, and then what will happen, even if there's a retrial, the police then now need to go away and say, we can't use any of the evidence that is potentially tainted. What evidence do we now have, and is it going to be sufficient? Are people's memories going to be good enough to persuade a jury?
Now, back to the matters in hand. Let's do a couple of quick questions in the last 2 minutes. Peter from Strathbogie, you've got a question about security cameras.
Yeah, thanks very much. I've got a neighbour who... I've got two blocks behind me, and one block has a security camera that overlooks the block that I'm ringing on behalf of, and it's obviously in the country, so it's not a picket fence or anything. It's a five-strand
post and wire. Yep.
And we don't. No one's looked at the camera, but you can see the camera from the house of the person I'm calling on behalf of. What's the law in terms of them being able to view his place?
There isn't any law. That doesn't mean they've got an unfettered right. You have a right to privacy, and you would be looking at the legislation relating to intervention orders, personal safety orders, if you had someone who you felt was staring at you all the time.
No, I don't believe that's happening.
No, I don't either, but I would be going to your neighbour or to the neighbour and saying, look, my concern is not that you've got security cameras on your property, but you've got security cameras on my property. Can we have a look at what your images are of so that I can be satisfied that you're not unnecessarily affecting my privacy? Right. So you have lots of people who might put a camera focused at the front gate and it picks up the house across the road. Yep. So you might lower the angle of the camera to focus more on the gate and less on the incidental images around.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. John from Warburton, you've got a question about gas bottles.
Good morning. It's just a general query about service charges for anyone who has rental gas bottles on their property where they don't have mains gas.
Yes.
I've just received a notice of a service charge and may I read it out to you. It covers all parts or thereof the 12 months commencing the 18th of the 12th, 2020. This invoice is for the supply of company cylinders or tanks installed in your premises. We refer to these as a service charge.
So, John, how long have you had the back? Are you complaining about the existence of the charge or the change of terms? How long have you lived there?
A couple of years. It's about a service charge for no service provided, similar to what the banks were doing. So it says that the service charge covers periodic retesting, revalving of cylinders, repairs and maintenance, initial purchase and replacement costs. Yes. Now, over the past 12 months, we have had no person come out to check the cylinders for pressure testing and X-raying, valve testing, or any work of that kind. And yet I'm charged a $83 fee.
Can I ask, John, would you be happy not paying the fee and being charged the actual cost of repairs as and when required?
Yes, because we use the gas very rarely. Our consumption of gas is probably 1 tank per year. Mm-hmm. We've got 2 tanks, so over that period, it may be an amortised charge, but there's no service that is being provided.
Oh, that happens a lot, not just for the banks, John. You'll get a service charge. I'm a service member of a road organisation now. I pay whether or not I call them out or not.
Correct.
And so you're paying for the standby charge, knowing that in the particular 12-month period that you're being asked to prepay, there may be no call on the service.
Yes.
So it's like having car insurance and not making a claim. So you do have the option to not pay it by asking them to come and pick up the bottle.
Yes, that is they do say that. You stop incurring the charge when the cylinders, tanks, equipment are returned to company. However, you'll still be liable for payment of any unpaid charges up until that point.
Well, they're giving you an invoice in advance, which starts on the 18th, which is Friday, so ask them to come and take it away by Friday. John, I have some sympathy for you, but it's the way of the world, and I actually think that it's, in a sense, it's like a lift inspection fee that the government doesn't always... you don't get inspections as often as you pay fees. In the great scheme of things, John, I would rather be paying $83 a year just in case something goes horribly wrong than several $1,000s when it does.
John from Warburton, thank you very much indeed for your call. David Whiting, it would be remiss of me not to thank you on behalf of Virginia for the amazing work you've done all this year. You are, I would suggest, one of the longest-serving ABC broadcasters, and you were obviously one of the most popular segments. The calls have lit up. We could have gone for at least another hour, so thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you, Matt. Hope you have a great Christmas.
Thank you very much indeed.